Hello, welcome to another episode of The Scoop today. So, I thought that I would talk a little bit about the case of Amanda Knox. So, I don't know if the name Amanda Knox sounds familiar to anybody, but this is a case that I have actually been following for about 15 years now. I even had a couple very old Facebook posts, and every once in a while, like they pop up as a Facebook memory when some of my posts about Amanda Knox come up, on like however many years ago today. So if you are not familiar with the case, let me give you a quick backstory about what happened. And I'm going to look down because I wrote a little bit of a timeline because, like I said, this case is like never ending. So back in 2007, Amanda Knox was a college student studying abroad in Italy. I don't recall exactly what she was going to school for, but she was doing a 1 year, so it's not even really like a semester abroad. She was doing a year there. I want to say she was studying like literature or language or something like that. So she had a roommate in an apartment in Italy, and she was doing her student thing, and she's from Seattle, Washington, so she went from college in Seattle. She went over to Italy to do her year, and she had a roommate named Meredith, and the two of them shared an apartment. They were both college students. Amanda, I think both girls were working. Amanda was working. I think she was working at like a bar. And she was supposed to work one particular evening, and the boss had told her that you're not needed. Take the night off. You're fine. You're not needed. So Amanda ended up going to a party. She went to the party, and after she came home from the party, she went back to her apartment, and it appeared that her apartment had been broken into. The door was open, things were all over the place, and she called her mom back in Washington, and her mother told her to call the police, and Amanda called the police, and the police came in. They knocked the door down. They knocked the door down to Meredith's bedroom, where they found her stabbed to death in her bed. And they ended up accusing Amanda Knox and also her boyfriend at the time. They accused both of them of having something to do with it, and it turned into this whole it was some sort of sex tryst that had gone wrong, and they were mad at the roommate, and so they killed her. So the police had Amanda and her boyfriend in questioning for an extended period of time. Like, this happened over the course of over 4 days, 53 hours. They were questioning the two of them, and apparently Amanda eventually like broke down and she signed a confession. So Amanda was accused of killing her boyfriend, or I'm sorry, her roommate, with her boyfriend. The roommate's name was Meredith Kircher. She was a British student. So Amanda Knox and her boyfriend were both sentenced to roughly 25 years. I think Amanda's boyfriend was sentenced to 25 years and she was sentenced to 26 years. So both of them ended up serving 4 years in this Italian prison. They were both released in 2011, and the reason they were released was because the Italy High Court they quashed the convictions, quoting glaring errors. The High Court said that Amanda was not provided with an interpreter. She was not given the opportunity to have legal representation. Like I said, she was questioned for 53 hours before she ended up just caving in and signed, some confession. So she was eventually determined that she was a vulnerable young foreign woman. She wasn't fluent in Italian. They, of course, were speaking to her in Italian, so she didn't know what was being said to her. She didn't know what she was being asked. So that was where the whole legal representation issue came into place. And I would imagine, too, so she was 20 when this happened. And, 20-year-olds, like, they don't know what they don't know. It's not the same as it is here in the United States. So she was released in 2011 and she came back home. Well, in 2013, Italy retried her and they found her guilty again. So I think that Italy does not have the whole double jeopardy laws like we do here. So because she was found guilty, she was exonerated, and then she was found guilty again. She was already back here in the United States when she was retried. In the United States refused to extradite her back to Italy, because that was one of the Facebook posts that I had back at that time. So this was in 2013 time frame, because I remember just kind of putting out a hypothetical, you're here, you're back home, this other country wants to retry you. What do you do? Do you go back knowing that you're innocent? Do you go back there, or do you stay here and never set foot back in that country again? And I remember at the time I had a lot of very mixed comments on Facebook. Some people said she's guilty, she should go back and face, and other people were like, she's not guilty. I wouldn't go back, personally, in my opinion, whether I was guilty or not. If I'm back home and my country's not going to send me back there, why would I go? So I don't know, I guess that's a moral dilemma that people have to face, on their own. And I think it's easy to say she should or I would, but you know what? I don't think that anybody really knows what you would do until you were in that situation. And God, I hope that nobody is ever in a situation where you're vacationing, student, or in another country for education, and you are accused of murdering somebody. That's a nightmare. So anyway, she was retried in Italy, and her conviction was overturned in 2013, but then it was overturned again in 2015. I mean, this is flip-flop back and forth ridiculously over the course of these like 16, 17-year time frame. So, her guilty conviction was overturned again, and they decided she wasn't really guilty. DNA evidence pointed away from her and her boyfriend, and the DNA evidence actually pointed to a man named Rudy, and I don't know that I even want to try pronouncing his last name. It's Guede. The DNA evidence pointed towards this Rudy guy, not even Amanda, not even Amanda's boyfriend. So her conviction was finally, eventually overturned in 2015. Italy said, okay, you didn't do it. Well, she's back in the news now because she still has one charge against her, and it's for slander of a man that she says was responsible for the murder. And so he is suing her for slander because he says, I didn't kill her. You said I did. You've dragged my name through the mud. So he's suing her for slander. So Amanda actually had a Twitter post recently, and she said that she's glad for the opportunity to have this slander case. She's hoping that she can clear her name of any and all ties to Meredith's name once and for all. So this case has fascinated me for years. So I was doing a little bit of reading about her, in the meantime. So, of course, United States has what's called the Innocence Project, and it's where lawyers take on cases of people who say that they're innocent. And Italy did not have an Innocence Project. They do now. In Italy in 2019 had invited Amanda to come over and speak, and she accepted that invitation, and she went over to Italy and she spoke about the Innocence Project, and it was all good. I gotta say, I would have had major pause if that was me, and I don't know that I would have agreed to go back over there, but she did. She spoke, and she's back home. So she's 36 years old now. She's married and she has children, and of course she's a big advocate on speaking out against representation and people who are wrongfully accused of crimes. So I think she drew on her own personal experience, and she's trying to pay it forward by advocating for people who are accused of crimes that they say that they didn't commit. So anyway, I just thought that this was a very interesting case. And if you are unfamiliar with the name Amanda Knox, maybe you Google her name and take a look at the whole history, all the timeline of her. She did write a book, and there's also a Netflix series if you're interested in watching a documentary about her and everything that she has been through over the course of over 15 years now. It's an interesting look from a criminal justice perspective. So that's the scoop today. I hope that you found this episode interesting, and like I said, look her name up. There's articles, there's tons and tons out there on her. This at the time that this happened back in 2007, and when she was released in 2011, this case was followed very, very closely by many people here in the United States because she's an American citizen and she was imprisoned in another country for a crime. So this, was highly, highly followed. And so, there's a lot outlining the whole history out there on her. So I hope that you'll give this episode a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Talk to you next time.